If you are looking on a series on quest building, that is where we are starting today. This is the introduction video, and we're excited to dive into everything that's going to be in this series. Stay tuned and check it out.
Welcome to Dungeon Brew.
This is our quest building series that John and I are putting together to look at a different number of quests that we organize and orchestrate within our campaign settings to bring players into the fold of all the shit that we put together for them. Kind of excited about this series and talking about all sorts of things, including what quests are and what elements you have to put in them in order to make them successful. I'm going to throw it over to John to kind of start us off into what people should expect in this series as the videos start to roll out.
Right, so we're not going to get into everything today because we're just trying to kind of give you an idea of what some of the things are, but do stay tuned throughout the rest of this because we're going to talk about tips and tricks and hooks and things like that within this video. The coming videos are going to include some conversations about open-ended and closed-ended quests, which may not be some terminology that people are familiar with. It's something that Joshua and I tend to use back and forth as we have conversations about how we develop quests internally and when we have conversations about them. So real briefly, closed-ended quest is a quest that we kind of have wrapped up. We know everything that's going to occur in it. We know the start point. We know the end point. Open-ended quests are quests that we leave usually up to player fiat, player interaction, player decision that allows us to then build that quest line out farther depending on the decisions that are made and how you can help to plan for that. And then finally, when it comes to quest building, we're also going to be talking about side quests and how to incorporate them, how to make them feel natural, how to make them feel like a part of the story that doesn't really kind of kick out and feel weird. So in general, we're going to kind of frame everything around those. And then from there, we're going to talk about some specific types of quests. So Joshua, if you want to talk a little bit about those.
Yeah, we've made videos before on the 3 tiers of gameplay, looking at social, combat, and exploration, and how to balance those within your game to really make sure that you're meeting the needs, the expectations of your players when you're putting together a story. And while you can look online for a lot of different quest types that are broken up, I don't know, anywhere from like 6 to 9 to 12 categories, you and I typically look at these as being social quests, combat quests, or exploration quests. And so we're going to kind of take some of those other nuanced words that you're going to be seeing on forums and in TTRPG communities, and we're going to categorize them differently within these 3 tiers of gameplay to just really streamline that thought process so it fits with the same, I don't know, ideology of our own gameplay and how we organize things. So we're going to have videos on each one of those and breaking down what those are or where those concepts fall within those 3 categories, and then talking specifically about how we build quests within that category that are going to engage players.
Right, and then finally we'll have a video that will talk about dungeon creation, which will kind of be a culmination of quest building. Oftentimes quests can be one and done's, real short. You could probably get a quest done, relatively quickly within a town or within a community. Dungeons have a tendency to actually incorporate a variety of quests or usually a combination thereof to try and make the dungeon feel fuller and have a variety of options for the players to do. It takes the results of those quests and the way that the players chose to engage with the content that you have, and then fill that out forward so that by the end of the dungeon it kind of gives a sense of the decisions made a difference in the way that things played out. So that will be the final video I think we're going to do in this series, where we could do a deep dive into dungeon building in relation to quests.
And admittedly, I'm pretty excited about that video. I don't know how all DMs or GMs think about dungeon building, but for me it's such a separate construct from the rest of the campaign or the world building or the setting that I'm really excited that we're kind of diving into that, because it's almost like it's like a bonus chapter that you're reading to bring the characters into that kind of has its own beginning and end for a lot of characters.
Yeah, and we've had a conversation about that too. Just that sense that it is something that is separate, that it has to be defined away from everything else that exists when it comes to quest building.
So as promised, we want to also take some time in this video just to talk about our own personal tips, tricks, and hooks to quest building and give you guys some good content on that end. So John, if you would like to start, what are some ways that you make hooks for quests to kind of get characters rolling with it, or I guess to even gauge their interest in the quest that you've prepared for them?
So I think that I may have talked about this a little bit in the past, but to try and give a little bit more clarification on this, when it comes to hooking in players, generally speaking, I always begin a campaign with a simple kind of forward quest that usually involves a dungeon. I like to start them in a dungeon. I like to start them in something that is engaging, that allows them to get comfortable with their characters in the sense of, these are my combat abilities, this is my social interaction, and usually that dungeon will include a number of things that it will include, like moral quandaries, puzzles, traps, tricks, things like that. And what that forces the players to do is it forces them to kind of really get comfortable with the character that they have, but it also gives me a ton of insight into the types of characters that my players are choosing to play. During the course of that, I like to lay out hooks as best as I can. I will give them interesting objects. I will introduce NPCs, that type of thing, that kind of force them to engage in a certain way. And then I take that information and I determine what available quests I want to build from that point forward. So what all of this does is it gives me insight into the characters. It allows me to put interesting things in front of them to see what the players and what the characters are interested in engaging in. And then I take those interests and I develop quest lines out of those in order to try and build things forward. I generally have an idea for what I want the campaign to look like as a whole, but if I'm building hooks, I want to get those in front of the players as quickly as possible so that I can then determine what is going to be worth my time in the future for building things out. Because I don't want to waste a bunch of time building out a quest line that interests me if it doesn't interest any players within the party. And then I can actually get something that is going to keep the players engaged for the long haul as they're moving through the world. Does that help? Does that make sense?
It does, and I love that process. I know that for many beginning DMs, they look for tools around quest building, and there are a lot of generators online where you can do little hooks and things like that can be put together for you.
101 hooks to grab your players or something like that.
And my suggestion for you is, if you utilize those tools, just make sure that you're changing some of the verbiage or the language that's within those and making it just specific to your campaign and to your setting to bring characters into that world. Because I really think that quests should open up the world for characters too. It should add in more to the lore and the story that really make it feel like a real place for them to adventure, and taking something random online might not necessarily fit within your world without you changing it up a little bit, but they're really great to get the creative juices started. I even utilize them sometimes. I'm like, man, I don't know what I want to do. I'll go randomly generate something and be like, oh, I like that concept. How do I fit this into the campaign that I've built?
Right. It's kind of it's the same thing that happens if you're writing, where you just kind of like get some story starters and that type of thing, and then you build off of it. They give you the first sentence, and then you go, oh, I'm going to turn this into something exciting.
Another thing that I like to do too, which I know you do this, John, is that I like all my characters to write a backstory before we begin gameplay, before we go into session 0, and I like to go through that and find things that I could build quests around to hook characters in that are related directly to their character, because it immediately gets them motivated to move into the storyline. Even just small pieces where it's somebody from their past that's doing something, or an artifact that they're looking for, or something that's connected to their history and their experiences as a character.
Right, and that's we've talked about this before. Motivations, minor, moderate, major motivations, those are important when it comes to character building. It gives the DMs insight into the things that the character is interested in accomplishing. Oftentimes, it's very easy, if you've got a character that's really interested in acquiring knowledge and lore, to lay knowledge and lore bits out in front of them, and then if they're interested in those, if they're picking them up, or if you have multiple ones in front of them and they key in on something specific, it gives you a direction to start building your quest lines. It's different, and I do see this in forums a lot of times, where A DM will have something that they think is interesting, and so they'll put a piece of lore in front of the character, and whether or not the character engages with it, they immediately start building out a quest line in front of that character or in front of the party for this bit of lore. And if the character isn't interested or the player isn't interested and they're being forced down this road to follow this information that they didn't have any connection to begin with, it really sets up the entire campaign for failure, because the DM is excited about something that the group isn't excited about, and the group is being forced to follow something that they're not interested in. It really just is not a good way of building things. Take the opportunity to try and pepper shot them with as many options as possible. See what sticks, and then build out from that point, rather than trying to focus in on something at the very start, where you're going to end up, I think, with a lot of trouble just in that regard.
Yeah, that kind of leads me into another like tip or trick that I consider, and that is to introduce quests in bite-sized chunks. Like just little small pieces to see if your characters are going to take a nibble on and start moving forward with before you spend countless hours building it all the way out into this full-fledged adventure. And along with that, you and I were talking about this a little bit before we began recording. Just make sure you're being time sensitive to how long your gameplay sessions are and what pieces you can fit within that gameplay session to make it feel like it's complete. You may not finish a full quest within a gameplay session, but having really identified stopping points within that quest line that's going to fit within your gameplay session is going to be more satisfying for your players.
No, I agree 100%. Getting solid stopping points, having expectations for start and stop times in general, which we've talked about doing something specific on this, but that it sets up parameters for a more enjoyable play. If your players aren't constantly going, well, when are we going to get started? When are we going to stop? And it makes gameplay, I think, in general more enjoyable to have that kind of thing clarified. But specifically saying, listen, these are the kind of humps within the story, within the quest, that once I get over a hump, is that a stopping point? We still have time left. Let me get over the next hump. Okay, we're really close to that stopping point. Let's end it here tonight. And being aware of that as you're moving through your quest building and kind of getting a feel for when should I actually call it quits for this session or call it quits for this quest line or whatever it is, just to kind of keep things moving smoothly.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other things that I do. I mean, the only other one that comes to mind is going to come later in videos when we're talking about the social combat and exploration pieces, where you're balancing your quests in a way that reflect what your game style is like. Right now, I'm running a game, for instance, that's primarily social. So I should have 60% social quest, 20% combat, 20% exploration to really balance the gameplay in a way that meets the expectations of what type of game I'm trying to run. If I'm primarily trying to run a social campaign, I don't want it to be full of exploration quests that are outweighing those social pieces. And so I try to be considerate or conscientious of that as well. But a lot of these things just take a lot of practice and experience to do, to kind of feel that naturally as you're doing it. I can't say that I have like an Excel sheet where I'm marking and checking to make sure that I'm finding that balance. But it's something that as you play with the people that you're playing with and you're DMing more, it's going to come more naturally.
One other thing that I do know that we wanted to talk about was unique items and unique information, uniques. And I'll talk about a couple of the ones that really that I focus on a lot, and I know that there's a few things that you like to focus on, but for myself, unique things that I generally include in almost every single quest line is I will include usually unique monsters of some kind when it's appropriate for, combat or whatever. I want there to be things in the dungeon that they have not come across before. And sometimes this is as simple as just reskinning a monster, which you can look at our monster creation video, but creating something that they haven't seen before, because you and I have been playing for more than 20 years each, and a lot of our players have been playing for a long time. Some are very new, but even in a short period of time, you've gotten used to the idea of what a goblin is. So having unique monsters forces the players to interact with it and engage with it in ways that they haven't before. It gets them really excited because then they don't know exactly what's going on, and that's always fun. The second unique thing that I like to include are unique magic items, and these don't always have to be super powerful, but I really enjoy building magic items, and so I have a tendency to build unique things. Usually, for my magic creation process, I like to do cost benefit things. Like almost every single magic item that I create is usually not just bonuses. There's usually some kind of cost involved. So there's a scaling increase of power or positivity that you can gain from a magic item, and there's usually a scaling decrease of some kind of cost or penalty that's associated with it, and it's left up to the player. It's not cursed. They can use it or not use it, but generally I like to include these things because then the players have to measure how much they're willing to bring in on their character for the benefits that they'll reap at the end of it. So those are a couple of things that I really like in terms of unique items or unique things that I like to include in quests and dungeons to make them engaging and interesting. I know that you have a couple others probably, Joshua, that really speak to you.
Do I? I can't remember what it is that I might like. I mean, monsters is a big one for me too, especially because you're oftentimes in my party. I was just thinking that I recently made golems that I reskinned that were actually scarecrows, or the scarecrow template that were underneath them. And I remember you coming in, you're like, I don't know what the fuck these are. And all it took was just a reskinning of them that made them feel unique and different and a challenge, because you see a golem and you don't expect them to act like a scarecrow.
Which is funny because a lot of times I know that you reskin things and I look at them and I go, this is just a reskinned blah. For whatever reason, the scarecrow completely just like went past me. I was like, I don't know what this is, and I like that. Like for as a player, as a DM who DMs a lot, who comes in as a player, I really like running into stuff that I don't recognize. It is a lot of fun for me because it immediately pulls me in, because I'm like, I need to pay very close attention because I need to know exactly what I need to do next so that I don't put the party in jeopardy, especially because in that particular campaign I've been playing the cleric, so I need to keep everyone alive. So
but outside of that, another thing that I enjoy doing the most is I really like looking at history and natural progressions of things in history. Whether it's knowledge or warfare or ideas or beliefs or mythologies that have kind of progressed through our own civilizations in the real world, and I like to replicate those within a D&D setting. So I'm also teaching something at the same time that I'm playing a game, and so that's probably the biggest thing that I do. And naturally, we've seen that humans were intrigued and motivated and pursued a certain type of interest with those things in history, and I oftentimes see my characters engage in that same type of intrigue with those when I repeat them in gameplay. So sometimes when I can't think of good quest hooks, I go back and go, hey, what happened in this period in history, and how do I replicate that to make it intriguing for my characters too? But that's, I think, my own like personal passion as a DM. I just love reteaching things, and then at the end of the session going, hey, did you guys just know you just played through this entire thing that just happened in this period in history? That's how it actually occurred in that time period. And so I find that to be fun twist of my own gameplay.
Yeah, and I think it's important not to underestimate the amount of excitement that can be permeated through to the players when a DM is passionate about something. Like I said, I think that there's a difference between forcing information onto your players and forcing them along a quest line for something like that, versus kind of having it underlaid throughout the quest or underlaid throughout the dungeon in such a way that it pulls the characters in because they recognize that there's something deeper underneath it, which can be very exciting. A couple of other things, and I'm not going to go into real depth here. Unique things. I really like unique traps. I like to put in things with unique ways of solving them. I very rarely include traps that just have a roll me a trap check to try and disable it. I dislike those, so I don't do that. I do unique puzzles. I very rarely do riddles anymore because, for the most part, a lot of my players kind of know the answers to the riddles and that type of thing. But when I do them, I always try to make them something unique or something that I make up on my own. Anything like that.
I'm trying to think of the number of times I've done riddles, and I may have had like 3 or 4 in the past several years, and I rewrite them. Like I rewrite riddles to try to give a different take on a concept. And it's hard.
Yeah, I don't do a ton of riddles. We used to use them all the time, but after a while, we would read them off, and most of the players who'd been playing for so long would just rattle off the answer before you could even finish. So it kind of lost its pizzazz at a certain point. And then the riddles that they don't know are usually the ones that stump you, and then that kind of detracts from the engagement and from the fun, because then you spend 10 minutes trying to solve something not really that enjoyable. So but those are just, in general, throwing in unique options, unique things that are not common in a quest line, not just making it a fetch quest where it's like, go get this thing and come back, and it's like, what was the point of that? Really helps to just kind of make quests, I think, more engaging and interesting.
Well, we hope that you guys are excited about this series as much as we are. We're going to be diving into it again, releasing a video every Monday until we are completed with all of the videos. And I am sure that we are going to be sharing lots of other tips and tricks and unique pieces to each one of those videos in their production. So please stay tuned, and we will see you guys all next time.
Jon should